Thank you for joining us. I'm Toke Eid, the director of the Keynes Fund in Cambridge, and my guest today is Dr. Ines Lee. We're here to talk about your new Keynes Fund project. What is your research question?
So in this project, we want to understand how our beliefs about meritocracy can explain our prejudices against certain groups and explain our preferences about how income should be distributed between various groups. We also want to study whether these beliefs about meritocracy, prejudices, and preferences respond to information. So in particular, we're looking at this question in the context of the higher education system in the US. So to be a bit more concrete, we first measure what beliefs people have about how meritocratic the higher education system is in the US. So for example, how much do people think that going to college or being highly educated is due to working hard or putting in effort versus being lucky, like being born into a family with the financial resources to support you to go to college. We then study how these beliefs affect our prejudices against the less educated, how they affect our preferences about the earnings gap between college and non-college graduates, and affect our support for educational reform policies like affirmative action based on class for college admissions.
What are you looking at that hasn't been addressed before?
So I think this project touches on several topics that haven't been addressed thoroughly in the literature. The first contribution is our focus on studying prejudices against the less educated. So social scientists have studied prejudices and biases based on various social divisions, such as race, gender, and ethnicity. But prejudices based on your educational qualification has received fairly little attention in comparison, even though education plays an important role in determining important outcomes like unemployment and income. So what we do in this project is we develop a new tool based on existing insights in psychology to measure our implicit prejudices against the less educated. The second contribution is the focus on our beliefs about how meritocratic the education system is. We develop several ways of measuring these beliefs, and we study how these beliefs might lead us to support certain policies that might perpetuate inequality because it makes us hold the less educated as being responsible for their outcomes. In contrast, existing studies have examined meritocracy in general, but there hasn't been much focus on meritocracy in educational systems, which is important context to study because I think this is a setting in which we typically think of as being meritocratic. And then the third contribution is our focus on whether simple informational treatments can change these beliefs about meritocracy. So we study whether these simple informational treatments can correct any misperceptions that we have, and subsequently whether our support for educational reform policies and our tolerance for inequality is affected. In comparison, existing studies tend to focus on documenting the extent of these misperceptions rather than correcting them. I think if these beliefs are malleable, then it suggests that there might be some relatively low cost ways of getting us to rethink what sort of policies might promote social mobility in the long run.
What wider social issues do your research address?
So I think this project speaks to several wider social issues, including the tolerance of inequality, our support for redistributive policies, and social cohesion between different groups in society. So it's been well established that education affects important outcomes like how much you earn and how happy or satisfied you are with your life. It's also well recognized that people have different opportunities to succeed academically. And the socioeconomic status achievement gap has increased a lot in many countries over the past 50 years. So nowadays, across most OECD countries, the likelihood of going to uni or college is significantly higher if you have a parent who also achieved that educational qualification compared to somebody born in a family whose parents didn't have that education. So despite this, it seems that most of us still underestimate what role background factors beyond our control, like family income, plays in academic success. So why do these beliefs in meritocracy matter for wider social context? Well, I think it might end up perpetuating inequality and reducing social mobility by discouraging us from endorsing policies that might help create more equal opportunities for educational attainment across the board. I think these beliefs might also encourage prejudices and negative attitudes towards the less educated, and possibly also create disparities in both economic and social prestige between the educated and less educated. And in recent years, we've seen that this kind of economic and social discontentment can be an important driving force behind support for populist politics.
One of the objectives of the Keynes Fund is to strengthen the research base in Cambridge and help younger researchers establish themselves. How does your project do that?
So from my perspective, the funding has really enabled me to embark on a larger scale project than would otherwise be possible with smaller research grants that I think are, typical for early career researchers. In practice, this means that I've had more resources to conduct larger studies and collect more data and have a larger sample size. It also means that there might be opportunities to work with research assistants and create opportunities for students interested in economics research to get a glimpse into what the research process is like. So I would say that overall, getting the opportunity to work with the Keynes Fund has really provided really valuable experience that I'm sure will help massively when applying for external sources of funding.